Well, good morning and thank you for getting out of bed early on Sunday morning. I certainly am not regretting it at all. So as you can probably tell, I'm unusual for someone my age, not because of the time. I am one of those people you hear about who is called politically engaged. More than that, in fact, actually. I'm someone who lives, breathes, and is occasionally suffocated by politics. As part of my job at the Financial Times, it's my job to go through, listen, explain, and tell our readers what's going on in the slightly weird world of Westminster, and occasionally elsewhere too. And this is when it's going so well so far. Why did I end up here? Well, it all goes back to a bit of advice I got when I was at school from a teacher. When I was trying to think about what to study at university, he said to me, do something that will get you a job, not a sort of arts degree. So I apologize to half the room here who's doing that. Now, I was technologically minded, so I decided to go for computer science. And there lied 3 hellish years of algorithms, coding, and number crunching. So after that happy period of my life, I decided that I would go for something more people-orientated. And to me, journalism is the very best of all the people professions out there. And why politics? Well, politics is essentially, it affects all our lives, as the expression goes. There's so much breadth to it that it seemed to me the natural thing to pursue as a career. So I love what I do, as you can probably tell. It's fun, intellectually challenging, and engaging. But unfortunately, not everyone feels the same way I do about political life. Trust in our political institutions is collapsing across the world, and across all generations too, but particularly for young people. That's the 18 to 34-year-olds who are going to define that as. There is even a certain sense that young people have just given up entirely on politics. But the question I want to raise is it because politics has given up on them? Oh, there we are. So it's a rather hairy time at the moment in current affairs, as some of you may know. From France to the Philippines, politicians and people actually are sticking their fingers up at the politicians and saying no to the established order. The rise of Donald Trump in America has confounded the media and political elites. Now, when I was at the Spectator back in August last year, I wrote that his campaign was on the precipice of imploding. So I was wrong before everyone else was. Then in UK politics, it's just as interesting. The rise of Jeremy Corbyn and the return of socialism to the hard left. The EU referendum is challenging Britain's place in the world. Now, Mr. Corbyn is again something that we in the media didn't quite understand. We certainly didn't expect it. And there's no doubting that he has revitalised the Labour Party from the grassroots up. I would say moving away from the centre ground might not be the way to win elections, but I might be proved wrong. In the EU referendum, we've got these energised Brexit campaigners who might take us out of the European Union and change Britain's place in the world. Then you've also got the rise and fall and maybe the rise again of UKIP, the rebirth of the Scottish Tories, the death of Scottish Labour, the government's reforms to the NHS, the BBC, devolution across various parts of the country. So no matter what you are interested in life, politics should interest you right now. But particularly for young people, I would say, because the decisions we will vote on in 2016 will have ramifications for the decades to come. As the great 1960s rock band Buffalo Springfield said, there's something happening here, but what it is ain't exactly clear. So this is why, for me, engagement is very important. Now, to all those issues, to millennials, that's the group who came of age around the year 2000. They might all sound a bit fuddy-duddy, because we are the people, after all, who have gazillions of apps on phones like this one, get our music from Spotify anytime we want, food delivered straight to our doors from Deliveroo at any time of the day or night. We are a generation that has disregarded traditional structures. And there is no structure more traditional in Britain than politics. And the reason for this is that so little has changed about how political parties operate. So say some of you here are interested in actually doing something, changing something. You'll think in your side, am I left wing? Am I right wing? Labour, Conservative, Lib Dem, what have you? You then might go and join a party, give them £10, £5 a year, what have you. And you've got the great opportunity to spend your Saturday mornings getting shouted at on doorsteps, dogs running after you, going on a march, hollering after a megaphone. How enticing does that sound? You might even decide to stand for office, go and be a councillor, be an MP. But by the time you've reached that point, you will have bought hook, line, and sinker into a political ideology. And to ordinary people, that's the incomprehensible part. Because most people change what they think. Their views come and go, and their party affiliations change just the same as well. And so looking at these people who are going on TV, ministers, saying lines they actually clearly don't believe in themselves, no wonder people are alienated by this. The other issue is that our parties still operate too much in broadcast mode. Back 20, 30 years ago, their weapons were TV broadcasts, billboards, and essentially they're doing the same thing now, but on social media and websites. We live in a world that is all about interaction, communication between different people, but our parties haven't caught up with that yet. There's also the issue that parties, particularly on the right, such as the Republicans and the Conservatives, think a lot about older voters. And there's a reason for that, because it's older voters who are the one who actually get off their bottoms and vote on polling day. And there's no greater example than the last general election, when people like me thought Labour was going to go into government, Ed Miliband was going to be Prime Minister, and all this was because of left-wing people on Twitter huffing and puffing, saying this is going to happen, hashtag sack Cameron every day. But as we know, it didn't quite turn out like that. So I understand why parties don't focus on young people, but that doesn't make it right. In fact, I think people are curious about the world around them. They want to take a different approach, a novel approach, you might even say. And the think tank Demos has done a lot of research on this. In their 2014 report, Tune In and Turn Out, they scotch the myth that my generation is self-absorbed and doesn't have any sense of principles or civic duty. And in particular, we are not easily characterized by left or right wing in the traditional sense. And this is what is challenging for the parties. So here's an interesting number from that report. 52% of young women and 45% of young men believe in more personal responsibility, individuals taking control of their lives. Now that is a very traditional conservative principle. They believe in liberty, personal choice, freedom. And it's ironic that the Tories are the party that probably spend the least amount of time trying to engage young people, because they think as people get older, they naturally become more conservative. If you look at the top concerns of young people, they're not too dissimilar from the rest of the country. The NHS, living costs, unemployment, housing. Even take the biggest policy they wanted, which was a national living wage. Labour made that a manifesto commitment, the Tories then nicked it, and it's in law. So that's something young people should really like. One thing that does give me heart, though, for political writers who bore on like me, is that vacuous celebrities, such as, say, Russell Brand, are not the way to solve this problem. If you again remember, Russell Brand, commentators, columnists said, this is a turning point in our society. He's a man who is going to convince his thousands of Instagram and Tumblr and Twitter followers to go and vote Labour. Yeah, that went well. Even empirically, when I log on to Facebook, and these are my non-political friends, I do have them, they are already posting lots of political content. They're slagging off politicians, they're laughing at them, they're expressing their views there, but just not in the way of joining parties or maybe even voting for them. The election of Sadiq Khan as the mayor of London last week was a prime example of that. Here was a man who inspired a lot of young people to go and canvass for him, to go and vote for him, to back him. And when he made it, there was a great sense of hope in London, particularly when you look at what he's offering versus Mr. Trump on the other side of the election. If there's any Donald Trump fans here, then I'm sorry for you. We've also then had this weekend, these are from yesterday. So this is the EU referendum I was telling you about. You've got the Leave campaigners, the In campaigners. Some of them don't seem to know what a T-shirt's for, putting it on top of a shirt. But they're out there. These are probably not the coolest kids in the block, as you can see. But they are engaging with politics. They are going and standing on high streets up and down the country to try and persuade people to get out and vote in this most crucial of elections. So I would say it's not about whether young people do or don't like politics. They clearly do. What it's about is trying to get our traditional systems to catch up with the world that we now live in. So this is the difficult part, is how you fix this, and not by moving polling stations into pubs, although that would be a very welcome thing. Political parties need to move on from a broadcast mode. They really need to change the way they talk to people. They need to interact more. You know, if you think of what's happened in my job, so when I write a piece of political commentary, I write it and then respond to FT readers' emails. I then argue with people on Twitter, oh, that's probably a waste of time, and go into the common threads. Again, I'm probably not doing a good case here of selling why I should interact more with people. But it's a two-way conversation. Writing a bit of political commentary is not simply a one-way motion these days. I think MPs as well need some simple proposals to make themselves more open. Who is going to go to a surgery, for example? It sounds like you're going to have your teeth pulled out or your leg cut off or something. Not talk about what concerns you. MPs can hold events, and some of them do, in pubs, in coffee shops. So they look like normal people and talk to, well, normal people. I think automatic voter registration up to the age of 21 is potentially a really good idea. So when you become of age, voting is just as keen as going to the pub or passing your driving license and what have you. For too many people, it's just seen, oh, they do it, not me. There's also make it easier to vote. Why can't you go to a polling station, register to vote, and vote on the day? That's one of the easiest and simplest things that could be done. But the first thing before all this is that politicians should remember that young people do care about politics. They do want to be engaged, and they are not some kind of alien species. There is so much to be gained by having a more representative democracy, one that reflects the company and has the mandate of more people behind them. So I don't think young people have given up on politics. It's time to show that politics hasn't given up on them. And one last message, 7th of June, deadline for registration for voting in the EU referendum, 23rd of June, vote in it. This is the great example to show them that they're wrong, that anyone who's below 34 here, you care about politics, you want to make a difference for our country's future. Thank you.